We concluded part one by, noting the starting to note the significant endemic factors in the military that prevent women in the military from preventing military sexual trauma. And one of the things that works against women is the fact that commanders, not prosecutors, determine who faces charges in the military, which has led to a lot of cases resulting in administrative punishment instead of prosecution, which is where we left off. The Denver Post, in their article about military sexual trauma and the fact that it doesn't get the respect it deserves in regards to the amount of investigative, the amount of weight thrown behind these investigations, I guess you could say, noted that in numerous cases that women who had been sexually assaulted, the prosecutors would say that there was enough evidence here to go ahead and go to a court-martial procedure, but the commander would say, no, we'll just do it with administrative punishment instead. In several cases that they noted, they said that they would say that they actually quit the investigation when the commander handed out the administrative punishment, when they actually had more leads to go. And you can go in and look at that at denverpost.com, yourself when you have the time. I do want to say that there are lots and lots of anecdotal stories. I mean, I literally read dozens, and they are all heartbreaking, from women being knocked out on their way to the bathroom and waking up being brutally sodomized, to people, to women being, hounded and gang raped, etc. I don't want to go into a lot of the details, mostly because they're just, very difficult to read or hear. I can't imagine what they must have been like to experience. But I do want to say that those examples are out there in like Jessica Popovac's article, the Helen Benedict article at Salon.com. There's an excellent article at MarieClaire.com, actually, of all places, that also has personal anecdotes from female soldiers, about the trials and tribulations they experienced under the duress of the Iraq War. Helen Benedict, in particular, actually talks about Camp Arifjan, which is called Generator City, because there's so many generators there. It's very loud, and it's a primary transfer port for troops into and out of Iraq. And like I said, the generators are so loud you can't hear people when they scream. So one of the first things female soldiers are told when they get there is not to ever go anywhere without another woman with you, because the chances are pretty high that you will get raped. Excuse me. There are instances of women who carry one story where a woman said she carried a knife with her all the time, not for the Iraqis, but for her own fellas, because she was worried about her own boys. And you can only imagine that the stress that must put on somebody, the trauma that must put, because from the first moment a cadet or a trainee steps into basic training, they're taught the idea that the military is one unit, one collective, one cohesive mind, moving forward with the advancement of all its primary purpose, and that every person plays an integral role, and you always have to back up your buddies, and you always have to be there to support them. These are the people you're supporting on if there was a mortar attack or a sniper to get you out of the way. And at the same time, you're constantly sexually harassed and under the duress of the idea that you could be sexually traumatized or assaulted or raped at any time. That's just ludicrous. It's very dichotomous in the face of what the Army tries to put forth, and it's even more dichotomous in the face of what the general media and the government establishment is trying to put forth, supporting our troops, especially considering how much, like I've said, how much cover-up has been going on within the Army. And we'll get into the government actually engaging in some cover-up momentarily. Colonel Karpinski, she's infamous, of course, for being the brigadier general who was demoted to colonel over the Abu Ghraib torture scandal, says that 3 ladies died because they did not drink fluids late in the day and wound up perishing of dehydration. And they didn't drink fluids because they didn't want to have to go to the latrine late at night because they were scared they would be raped by their fellow soldiers. The Army says that it's just sour grapes because she got demoted. And while there may be some truth to that, I don't think that in and of itself means that, her story is not true. And she has dedicated herself to exposing the plight of women in the military since her demotion. James Risen of the International Herald Tribune puts forth also that not just military women face the threat of sexual trauma within the confines of warfare, that there are also the women independent contractors, non-combatant civilian contractors, and employees over there who were working. In one case, Mary Constant, who was working for Halliburton's infamous subsidiary KBR, she drove trucks. She drove trucks for them. She claims to have been fired because she got sexually assaulted, and when she reported to her immediate superior, she says nothing happened. When she went higher up, she says that's when she was fired. Another important thing to note that while the military's response has been tepid and paltry at best, at least legally speaking, there is a response for women within the military when they are sexually assaulted or raped or what have you. On the contrary, like with the infamous Blackwater assassination and massacre in the town square in Iraq, where nobody really knows if they can be prosecuted or not, and nobody knows what's going to happen. It's the same thing with female contractors who are sexually assaulted or raped on the job in Iraq. They fall into a legal hole of limbo where nobody's really sure who's in charge and nobody knows what they should do, or who gets jurisdiction. Although the diplomatic corps in Iraq has, I think it was currently, as of a year ago, was investigating 4 rape cases. The second rape that I mentioned in part 1 that Jessica Popovac goes into much more detail, it involves essentially trying to blame the survivor. The system starts to look for ways to blame the survivor, starting with the questioning process. Where they they try and switch it around to where maybe they can get charges against the person bringing charges for sexual assault, like charges like intoxication or underage drinking, lewd conduct. There is a systematic abandonment of survivors within the military paradigm for dealing with trauma, including in one case a woman who claimed to be gang raped wound up getting charged for underage drinking and lewd conduct, and only after an intense popular movement were the charge of lewd conduct removed, although underage drinking stuck around. In the same Marie Claire article I was talking about, Captain Jennifer Arrington told her story of sexual assault, went on to talk about subsequent cover-ups in the military, and when she addressed the Women's Caucus in Congress, a member of Congress actually asked her to censor herself because some of the things she were going to say were rife with vulgarity, and again, that makes it out to seem like it's the survivor's fault. Sarah Corbett, in her article in the New York Times, says that the dominant narrative of veterans that she talked to, it's a 26-page article. I insist that you take a look at it, just like Jessica Popovac's article, all the articles mentioned here. She says the dominant narrative becomes this: allegations of sexual trauma, often denied or dismissed by superiors, demotions in court-martials of the survivor, of the reporter, of the person reporting the damages, and then lingering questions about what happened. The Bush administration itself engaged in a cover-up. On September 29th of 2005, Representative Lane Evans of Detroit chastised the Bush administration for not releasing a VA study on military sexual trauma in the National Guard and Reserves. The report was due March of 2001 and had been delayed 4.5 years. The report stated that MST among females is 60% in the reserves and National Guard. Males at 27%. Rape prevalence was reported in the report. It was a reported 11% among ladies and 1.2% among men. While shouting loudly, as loud as they possibly can, that people like me who don't want the war to happen need to support the troops, the Bush administration is going to increase VA care by 9% for 2008, but then it's going to cut it by $1.8 billion in 2009 and 2010. There'll be a small part 3 to sum everything up, but I do hope that you take a look at those articles, and I do hope that we can use these videos as a springboard to really look at the role MST has in the military.